welcome everyone to our October book club reading or book club discussion of Fuzz by Mary Roach. So it seems as though we've been on a little bit of an eco-themed book club this year, which is fabulous. I thought that this tied in well with Diary of a Young Naturalist and Brian Christie's book, and Damnation Spring. So because we don't have because this isn't a novel, I think we're just gonna all take turns, talk about our favorite parts, anything that really fascinated us, terrified us. And I'll start with an animal encounter I had once in Custer Park, South Dakota. Ahead of us, there were all these cars lined up, and we're sitting by the side of the road, and it's, what are they looking at? There was a giant bison laying on his side. And so people would drive up, they'd look at it, and then they'd drive on. So it was our turn, and he kind of just started rocking. And my husband says, who's driving, I'm in the passenger seat, says, he's just itching his back. I said, no, he's getting up. No, he's just itching his back. And so he got up. And my window is down, and I like slowly put my window up, and we drive forward. So we're like right next to him. I thought we were leaving, but no, we just got a little closer. And all of a sudden my window was down. And I'm not kidding. It was like this. If he had snorted, it would have got me in the face. And yeah, luckily my 2-year-old was asleep. My one kid was like so far back in the corner, he was in North Dakota, and my other kid is just like, thinks it's the most awesome thing in the world. So that is my animal encounter. We survived it. We were in a minivan. If that bison had wanted to, he could have knocked us over. But we saw plenty of dumb people that were out of their cars trying to get close. Just ruins it for the animal, for everybody else. And, to put an animal in danger like that is so unfair. So I guess that kind of leads right into this book. I just loved this. And I said in the newsletter that it took me twice as long to read this because I kept pausing to read things out loud to whoever happened to be next to me. So I just thought it was fascinating. I haven't read any other of Mary Roach's books. I don't know why. I hand sell them to people because I know that they're fantastic, but I haven't read any of her books, but I will now. Does anybody have their own animal encounter that they want to talk about, or did anybody have a chapter in the book that they really want to go into? Diane?
I had my purse snatched by a monkey in Gibraltar many years ago. And there's signs everywhere that warn you about, not having food and all that kind of stuff. And I had kind of a shoulder bag, and I had forgotten that I had like a little pack of trail mix in it. And there was a teeny tiny corner, I guess, of the cellophane sticking out of the zippered pocket. And this monkey, and if you've seen those monkeys in Gibraltar, they're kind of big, saw that and just literally, it was so fast, snatched my purse and took off with it, started to take off with it. And fortunately for me, since it had my passport and, all my other stuff in it, there was a very kind gentleman who grabbed it and was in a tug of war with this monkey and finally got the purse back. The monkey grabbed the trail mix out of the pocket and then let the purse go. But it was, those monkeys are they're cute, but they're kind of scary when you get into that kind of a confrontation.
Yeah. So the monkey didn't want your credit card. He just wanted the
trail mix. Yeah.
Food.
Yeah. But I thought what was so funny, what I loved, and I love this book. I haven't quite finished it, but so much of it I was laughing out loud. How unbelievably smart these animals are. The bears getting into a house and, not trashing anything, just going right to the fridge, eating what they want.
Unwrapping a Hershey's Kiss.
Yeah,
Those
unbelievable.
claws, how? Yeah.
And the monkeys in India learning how to, grab something that they think might be valuable and then hold it for hostage for some food. They'll give you back your phone if you give them some food.
Yeah.
Just incredible. And I also love her, just her way with words and some of the funny puns is not the right word, but some of the wordplay she does with different things.
She's
And
great.
at one point when she was talking about the deer at that research place in Ohio, and that they were just strolling around like guests at a wedding. Just her descriptions were so vivid and creative. I just think they were great. And
Yeah.
I'll read other stuff by her now too.
Yeah. Here's one of my favorite word plays that she did. It's in the Gulls of St. Peter's chapter. Hundreds of nuns are in town this week. I've seen nuns with green habits, pink habits, bad habits, nuns vaping, nuns cutting in line. Right now, nuns are running, laughing, elbow pumping, and veils flying. It's just the bad habits from it's just such a nice. And then she gives examples of bad habits, and that's good because it's bad habits whether you're in a habit or not. She's very clever. And she's such a great example, I think, and a couple of her other books that I've read are equally fascinating. She's just one of those people you could tell just gets interested in something and then just keeps following whatever breadcrumbs she discovers. And it just leads from one thing to the next. She's really something. Wow.
Right. I read an interview with her. So this book was not what she set out to write. First, she wanted to talk about emergency responders, like humans, and realized she could never be involved in that because they're not going to take her into a wildfire or into an earthquake or something. And then it evolved finally, like, what if it's the animal's not the victim, the animal's the perpetrator, or the nature's the perpetrator. So that's how she finally came around with this. And luckily she started writing this before the pandemic because, she could talk to scientists or the park rangers or whatever via Zoom, but not quite the same as being there and seeing what they're talking about and, working on the cadavers from a bear mauling or whatever that they did in Reno.
God, wow.
Yeah, and so much of this is, it all comes back to the humans, of course, and our bad behavior. It's hard, like Diane was talking about the bears walking into these $50 million homes that are built in bear country, and shocker that a bear's going to walk into his own habitat where you built your house and open up your fridge. But that was that was fascinating too. I don't think there's a bear-proof door apparently.
I can't imagine that there's a bear-proof door.
No.
If a bear really wants to get in someplace, they'll get in, I think.
But the bears were polite. They just went in and got the food. The macaques are naughty. They just want to destroy things.
That just made me think of a bear story although you know what, I think I wrote it in a blog post once, so I won't bring it up again. But I will bring up. Helen and I were in Iceland a few summers ago, driving in the fjords, in the West Fjords, and all the sheep just, they live all over the farmers just let the sheep roam from April to October or to September, and they're just all over the place. And so when you're driving on, there's very few roads, and you're driving on these roads, and the sheep are just sitting on the side of the road. Frequently, it would be a mother and two babies, and we saw maybe 5 other cars the whole time we were there. This was, there was just nobody there, and so I strongly urge, if you go to Iceland, go to the West Fjords, because it's so pristine and uncluttered. It's just great. So we're driving along, and all of a sudden a car comes roaring up behind us. And just as the car is coming up behind us, and I'm sort of watching it, a mother goat and her two children, are mothers goats? Can they be goats? I don't know. And but they decide to cross the road at this moment, right in front of me. And this car's behind me. I just thought I've got to slam on my brakes because this little, 12-week-old baby is right in front of the car. And I turn the wheel and I hit the brakes, and this baby just goes straight up in the, I didn't hit him, he just jumps straight up in the air above the hood of the car and lands on the side of the road. And I just thought, oh my God, that's just incredible. And, nobody could have taught him. He was too young. It's just, he just knew what to do, and he just did it. And he was probably going, thanks, Mom. Thanks a lot. Okay, boomer, but it was just so cool. And the guy behind me was pissed, and, okay, that's my story.
Well, it makes
tell us the bear story.
Oh, well, there was a bear. I used to live up along the side of Pikes Peak in Colorado, and there was a bear around. There was usually bears in the spring, and there was this maybe 2-year-old brown bear who I'd seen a bunch of times walking. And one Saturday morning, there was a dog. What kind was it? A Weimaraner, maybe? A very high energy and nervous dog who lived down the street, and nobody kept their, dogs just wandered around. It was way off the road and, up on the side of a mountain. And I woke up one Saturday morning hearing the neighbor's dog barking and barking and barking and barking. And I thought, God, even for this dog, this is terrible behavior. And my dog was getting riled up. So I went outside, and here's the dog barking at the bottom of a tree right on the edge of my property. And 15 feet up the tree is the bear. So the dog has treed the bear, and the bear's looking down at the dog, and the dog's looking up and barking like mad. And the bear looks over at me, and I'm just going, sorry, I can't do anything about it. And I told the dog to shut up, and the dog kept barking. So the bear starts to sort of inch down the tree, this little by little inch down the tree. And my dog and I are just watching this. And the other dog, still barking, starts to back up. As the bear starts coming down the tree, the dog starts backing away from the tree. And finally, the bear got about 4 feet from the ground, and the dog stopped barking. And it kept kind of moving backwards, and the bear's getting closer to the ground. And finally, the bear gets off the tree, turns around, and looks at the dog, just stands there and goes, "Roo!" And the dog just takes off in the other direction, and the bear just walks up the hill and goes away. It was just beautiful to watch, because the bear was just kind of saying, you know what, get out of here. You're really driving everybody nuts, and it's a Saturday morning, so shut up. It's just beautiful. So that's the bear story. Oh, Larry's here. What planet are you on this month, Larry?
Just drove through a thunderstorm coming home from a Bridges Library System meeting, but I walked in on your stories. Are you writing your own animal-human conflict book?
Yeah. No, I'll save my favorite one from when I was at a zoo one day. I'll save that for the end of the thing, because it's a very embarrassing story about me. Those are my favorites. How are you?
Good. What else did I miss? The author's not here today, is she?
No.
No, we've gotten so spoiled.
Would you like an opinion about the book?
Yes, of course.
I loved approximately the first half to the first 2/3 of the book. I was reading it on a plane back and forth from Salt Lake City. But then when I finished the last third, I felt like there was a letdown. She was so funny and so informational. The first half, I felt like she ran out of gas the last part of the book. I didn't find the last third as informational or funny. I don't know if anyone else had that reaction.
Anyone?
Yes, I agree with Larry. I really loved the first part. And about that, I think it was about the last third. I felt it really slowed down. It was as if she put all her most dramatic encounters at the beginning, and then we were left with a lot of scientific stuff at the end that just didn't have the drama, I thought, in my opinion. It was worthwhile knowledge, but it didn't have the drive of the first part.
Mice don't compare with bears and elephants and everything else. But I love the first half to 2/3, especially that seminar she went to where they were next to the Ponderosa room. And trying to see where it is. I can't find it now. Oh, here it is. The line in the video meant to intimidate and destroy. The bingo party has to be wondering what the hell is going on in the Ponderosa room. I just thought that was really funny.
Well, I have to admit that I haven't bought the book yet or read the book yet, but I was interested because my daughter is a zookeeper, and she has a lot of stories from her experience so far, even though it's only been about 5 years. She was at Blank Park Zoo in Des Moines, but I was wanting to just hear how the book was before I end up buying it for her, reading it for myself. And I live on a little 40-acre organic farm in Viroqua. I don't get to come to your book talks, but I've always been interested. So when I saw this one today, I just thought I'm gonna crash the party. But as you were telling stories, my favorite animal story, since I live on a farm here, and it is farm animals and not wild animals, and it sounds like the book is about human and animals encounters. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So it's kind of like that. My husband and I were just having our first flock of sheep. We had started off with 5 and ended up with 50, of course, but it was our first winter of, well, actually spring of lambing. And we had a sheep a ewe that looked like she was suffering, like she was having some trouble with the lamb being born. And we went out and we were watching for a while to just see, if we should call the vet yet or what we could do. And we had a ram, and our rams have always been called Randy because they are Randy. And so this ram came over, and she was separated, as they do. They separate themselves from the rest of the flock. And sometimes she'd stand up and then she'd lay back down, and she'd stand up and lay back down. But one of the times he was hanging by her the whole while. We hadn't really noticed that before with the other ones. They go off and have their own, and we hardly ever had to get involved. But this time he was there, and when she was laying down, he literally, she was laying down, and he laid on her body and rolled toward her bottom. And he'd lay on her and roll toward her bottom as if he was helping deliver that lamb. It was something I've never seen before. And he never left her side. He stayed there the whole while. But I've told people that story before, and they find it incredulous that this animal did this. And it was right close to that where our gate was. So we noticed it more than we usually do. Sometimes they go way off, but I thought that was kind of an example of a time when the animals don't necessarily need us. He was midwifing her.
Yeah. And the baby was born successfully?
Yes, eventually we didn't stay out. We went back in the house and it wasn't that much longer. She must have delivered on her own before the vet had to be called or anything. But yeah, it just wasn't, things weren't moving along. And I just, wow. So thank you for letting me crash the party.
Yeah, welcome. I've never heard anything like that. Oh my gosh.
You should buy the book for your daughter that works in a zoo, because the book really sympathizes with the animals and how stupid the human beings are. She would definitely like it.
Yeah, I think so. She's got quite the stories of human animal interactions, and also just the training, you know, what they do to train and then to keep them healthy and happy. We always call it around here, even with my grandchildren, when we do something that's kind of fun or whatever, we call it enrichment, because she was always working on enrichment for the animals. So something exciting and different, a different way to present their food and all of that. So yeah. Okay, good. That's a good recommendation.
Yeah, you should. I think she'd love it. It's
amazing approach for a zookeeper, because has anybody been to a zoo where, I know that in Minneapolis, the polar bear just does the same routine.
Mm-hmm.
He goes this way, turns around, goes, you know, and I think it's amazing, or not amazing, I think it's wonderful how zoos are starting to become more habitats, and not just cages, because we went to the Lincoln Park Zoo, which is a beautiful zoo, but my kids couldn't stay that long because the chimpanzees looked so sad. They're like, yeah, let's go do something else, because it's so bad for them. So
yeah, she's actually torn herself about continuing, whether it really is her path or she wants to work with animals in a different way. But helping zoos be healthier was one of her goals in the beginning too. It wasn't just to have a job. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
They're starting to train zookeepers. She went to one of the first trainings in the United States, training centers in Portland, where it's not just people, you know, off the street that they used to hire and train on site. Now there's actual training programs for them as well. So.
I have a couple of animal interactions. So I used to volunteer in Australia with the RSPCA, and after one of their major wildfires, we were rescuing wildlife, including koala bears, and we were treating birds. So I had one that I was kneeling next to and kind of sitting there, and he actually crawled up into my lap and wrapped his arms around my neck and leaned his head on my chest. So my takeaway from that story is that I think they know more than we think they do, especially when we're trying to help them. But he stayed in that position the whole time we were treating his burns.
Cindy, do you have any other stories about when you were in Guam?
So in Guam, they have there's a lot of cruelty and abuse. And oftentimes we would get dogs that were horribly emaciated and just walking skeletons, essentially. And they knew when we were nurturing them through recovery, when we were helping them get used to eating again. And we had one Dalmatian that was near death when we took him out of the cage they had him in. And he knew. I mean, he would scream in pain when he tried to lay down because he was so emaciated and it hurt his bones to touch anything. But with care and dedication, he recovered, and he was the happiest dog you would ever meet. Even though he'd suffered so much abuse, he just took every moment of life that he had, and he lived until fairly old age. Actually, back here in the United States, his mom brought him back with her. So they know when we're trying to help them, they bond with us, and they can relate to us in that level. I think they know a lot more than we give them credit for.
Yeah, so I think a theme that goes throughout the book is the human actions and inaction, like with the macaques. I think I'm saying that right, the macaques in India, where they could possibly give them a contraception that would last with a one dose, but the animal will live its life, so they're not going to see, and they live like 13 years, you're not going to see an instant improvement in the little purse snatchers. You know, it would be 15, 20 years down the road. And so the authorities thought that, you know, that wouldn't be worth it, because the public would be like, oh, you spent all this money and there's no results. We're too impatient to wait 20 years or 15 years to see things like that. And, you know, just the simple, how the bears could be protected in Colorado if the humans acted as they were supposed to. So I don't know. I mean, there's the overpopulation side, the destruction or the livestock being killed by wild animals, and then the other side is, but when we keep taking away their habitats, how are they going to survive? And if we're losing a piece of the cycle here, you know, when one animal goes extinct, it really affects the whole ecocycle. Like when they took the wolves out of was it Yellowstone?
Mm-hmm.
And then
Yes.
the deer, you know, the deer just took over. There was no green, there was no grass. And when the wolves came back in, things started to flourish again. So it's, you know, it's problems we cause. How are we going to fix? And you know, there are so many, you know, everything with politics, who's going to make money off it, who's not. Although here's an aside. I know it might be weird to have a favorite cabinet member, but I do. Deb Haaland. I just loved watching her pull back millions of acres back into the interior departments and become protected lands again. So I don't know, how do humans fix the problems that we've caused? And is there such apathy that, you know, maybe people don't? I don't know. What can humans do what can we do as individuals to help?
Does she offer anything like that in the book?
Well, no. I mean, she talked to all these different groups that had ideas of things that could happen, but it basically comes down to restaurant owners not locking up their dumpsters or leaving out a whole vat of grease and attracting bears, and then the bears get shot because when the human comes out to dump the garbage, they get bit in the butt or something. So, you know, it's totally unfair it's setting these animals up to fail, basically, in some cases.
She does have a useful couple of pages at the end where to give you suggestions of who you could contact if you have animals around your house that you want to treat humanely, if you want to try to remove them and things like that. So, I mean, I think that's useful in a very specific way. But yeah, I think she's much like Elizabeth Colbert's book this year, Under a White Sky. I mean, the book is really a beautiful example of human inventiveness, except that the human inventiveness is caused by the problems that previous humans had created, so that then we're left to try to imagine the richest possible use of our imaginations to help the mess we've made. And I think that, yeah, the kind of the general tone of the book, at least for me, is, you know, she's sort of wryly admitting that, you know, and most of the humans in the book I think, or a lot of the ones that she interacts with over and over, are very concerned with all of the issues. But also, I mean, she talks with a lot of people who both are trying to help species and are also hunters, that sort of dichotomy in people's lives. Yeah, I think she did a great job of kind of painting vivid pictures. And if she doesn't offer solutions, what she does do is the same thing that people like John McPhee do. They create such interesting circumstances that it makes you want to learn more about things. And in some cases, probably makes you mad. And then, when you're angry, you want to do something too.
Activism.
And her footnotes are absolutely hilarious. I mean, her footnotes are just brilliant. So, she's got a lot going on.
Probably does not have a future in writing travel blogs, because I never want to go to India. And my thing is snakes. So.
Yeah.
All right, Kate, I'm sorry to put you on the spot. Have you had any good animal encounters in Japan?
Oh yeah, have I ever? I had one. It was, well, perfect timing in terms of this book, not in my life, because I never want to experience this ever again. But like a month ago, I was hiking in Kobe, which is the city next to Osaka. And it's a really, really interesting, I don't know if anyone's been there or like knows anything about it, but it's a really interesting city because it's right on the coast. And then, like, no exaggeration, if you walk out of the city, like from the downtown station, 10 minutes, you end up just in a mountain. So nature and the city are like very, very close in this part of Japan. And the city is famous for wild boar issues. There are bears also, and snakes, but the big issue is wild boars. So you go hiking, there's all these like watch out for wild boar signs, and I don't know, maybe I'm just an idiot or I haven't lived in nature like ever, but I've always been like, oh, it's fine, there are other people hiking, make some noise, they'll stay away. But I heard after the fact, because of the pandemic, not many people obviously are going hiking, so these wild boars are coming from like the depths of the mountain further into the city. And in retrospect, that's really obvious, but I didn't think about that at the time. So I was maybe like 15 minutes from the nearest train station, still up in the trees, and I saw something. I am like nearly blind, by the way, so this was really quite dangerous, but I saw like a tiny brown thing moving in the distance and thought, okay, I've heard there are wild boars in this area. I should probably stop and like figure out what that is in the distance. And it's this tiny, like the size of a house cat. And it was really, really cute. And I'd never seen a wild boar in person. So I thought, oh, that's not that bad. What are these people talking about? Like Japanese people are just exaggerating. They're just like tiny little guys. And I thought, but you know what? Okay, I don't know. So I'm going to turn around and I'm going to try to find a different route because I'm not actually that dumb. And I turned around and was walking backwards away from it, like you're supposed to do. And I turned backwards, and the papa bear was like right behind me, like a meter away. And those things are freaking huge. If you've ever seen a wild boar, it was like my size. And I think my heart stopped for a second. And so did I, because I know you're not supposed to run from them, because apparently they can run up to like 45 miles an hour. Not something I want to mess with. I was really good at track and field, but like not that good. So I kept trying to find different ways to go, and I kept running into more wild boars. I guess the whole family was out for the day. So in the end, I was just like kind of wandering back and forth, like frantically Googling, what are you supposed to do if you see a wild boar? It's so stupid, like such a millennial thing to do. But it said, if you can't find an escape route, what you should do is climb a tree. So I climbed up a tree as high as I could get, which is pretty high, and just sat there for like an hour watching this whole family just kind of like nose around the bottom of the tree, thinking like, this is the stupidest way to die. This is going to be in the news. Like some idiot foreign girl gets attacked by wild pigs because she doesn't know what nature is. Just like such a panic about this. And then
they could possibly eat your whole body, you know.
what the hell? Thanks for telling me that.
Yeah.
Might not be anything left.
Yeah. So we'd never, you would just disappear. We wouldn't know what happened.
Yeah.
That's
Fantastic. I'm never going to that city ever again.
They have tusks.
They do, yeah, they do. But it was kind of interesting, like, I know this is going to be a long story, but eventually this old guy came walking down the mountain and I yelled down at him and nearly gave him a heart attack. Like, hey, did you see any wild boars?
talking tree. Yeah.
Yeah, he said he thought it was a ghost at first, because apparently they're also quite common in this part of Japan. So anyway, I jumped down from the tree and I asked him, like, oh, you saw them and you just went, shoo, and they went away? And he was like, yeah, they're not that dangerous. You just got to tell them firmly, just go, and they'll run away. And he was telling me that maybe a decade ago in Japan, that part of Japan had really big problems with like very aggressive wild boars that were like pretty much out to get you if you saw them. And so we only talked a little bit, but he said basically the city government had this campaign of like, I don't know, he said getting rid of, I assume it's a euphemism, like the ones Mary Roach didn't particularly like in the book. Getting rid of the more aggressive boars so that now the ones remaining are like fairly gentle. I mean, if you go at them, they'll probably come after you as well. But if you don't make yourself a threat, I guess this current population is quite like tame by comparison. So I haven't had time to research it yet. And I really wish that she had gone to Japan, because I think, you know, it's such a tiny country and nature and people are so like intermingled here that I think it would be an interesting case study. But I'd really like to know how Japan has dealt with that, taming its wild boar population so that it's not as much of a threat.
Kate.
Yeah.
Just one piece of advice that I know generally for mammals. If there's a small one, I wouldn't pick it up or think it's cute or hang around with it, because probably mom or dad is right there going, excuse me, pardon me, shall I eat your arm first or your leg if you put that baby down? Yeah.
No, I would never go anywhere near it. Trust me. I just thought it was a lot cuter than I was expecting from a distance.
Oh, okay. It's the way you said it. I thought you didn't pick it up, did you?
Oh God, no. I know enough not to do that.
Yeah, because maybe the dad would have tapped you on the shoulder. Right, Hannah? That's a good girl. Good girl. I know. Come here. Come here.
Can I just ask Kate what you're teaching in Japan? I take it you're a teacher.
Oh no, I'm not teaching anything. I'm an actor. No. I used to be a teacher. But the reason I came to Spring Green in the first place is because there's a theater there that I studied at, and then I do that same acting job, but in Japan now.
Oh.
I hope that doesn't turn anyone off from coming to Japan. It's really lovely, and probably animals are not going to attack you. It's a great country. I'm not selling it much better than Mary Roach sold India, I'm afraid.
I'm canceling my plane ticket to India and Japan now.
Oh, no.
That's right.
I want to step in here and say, having been to India, it is really a beautiful country. And the people are very lovely and welcoming and generous, and it was the trip of a lifetime. So I do recommend India, but just don't carry a purse if you're around monkeys.
Right. And I recommend Japan. And I'm with, it is beautiful. But I never had a wild boar interaction. But I was in Kyoto, but I didn't go to Kobe ever. But it sounds pretty scary. I was directing a play at Alabama Shakespeare many years ago, and I used to, on my day off, I'd just drive around the countryside, see Alabama, and someone had said to me, "Be careful of the wild pigs. There are wild pigs in packs running all over the place." And I thought, come on, wild pigs, give me a break. And one of the days that I was out, I saw this huge pack of these pigs running across the road, and they were huge. And then 3 days later, I read in the paper that some couple was following another car, and the couple was in a convertible, and the car in front of them hit an adult wild pig. And Mary Roach talks about this in the book, about the height of legs and things. But for some reason, the other car must have hit its brakes, hit the pig. The pig shot up over the first car in the air and came down and killed the woman sitting in the passenger seat of the convertible.
Wow.
So, killed by a flying wild pig. I mean, you just think, what are the odds of that happening? But I mean, it's that section about hitting, because there's so many deer in Wisconsin, and a deer hit my car once, but on the side. But yeah, I hadn't thought about the fact that depending on how high the legs are, they might come right through your windshield if you knock it, straight onto the hood of the car. But yeah, it was really scary.
What we need to know is the conversation of the convertible. Had the driver just asked for something incredible, and the woman said, "When pigs fly."
Boom, ladies and gentlemen. That's Nancy Bainan. She'll be here till Thursday. Try the veal. Okay. Hannah, stop.
Well, it makes me pretty grateful to be in Wisconsin, where deer and raccoons and possum are about as dangerous as we get around here.
Yeah. I'm gonna remember Kate's story for a long time. Look at this pretty little pig. I think I'll pick it up. I'm gonna take it home with me.
I didn't pick it up. I didn't go anywhere near it.
So I will say her one passage about the badgers, I didn't realize how bad badgers are as animals. On page 125, she says, badgers are unweaselly members of the weasel family who went their own way, specializing in bullying through ground squirrel burrows to eat the occupants. They evolved long, sturdy digging claws that give their tracks a spindly Edward Scissorhands appearance. And I thought, gee, you never hear about that at UW with Bucky Badger as this lovable mascot. So that was eye-opening to me, that they take over the squirrel burrows and eat the occupants.
Although there have been a lot of badger sightings lately in Southwest Wisconsin, like just walking down the sidewalk. Mm-hmm.
Please stop.
Yeah.
And how do they interact with people?
I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't go by it. They'll rip your throat out.
Well, the other thing that I thought was in the second half of the book, there were so many situations where someone had brought in an animal to take care of, to hunt down a different animal, and then that animal becomes omnipresent, and then they bring in something else, or they have to, drop poison from planes, or, it's just, there was a wonderful documentary in the early 80s called, I think it was called The Cane Toad, but that's what happened in Western Australia. They brought cane toads in to eat some particular kind of, bug in the fields, without thinking that there wasn't a single predator for cane toads, and cane toads just took over and ate everything for 100 years. But it's really, and somebody's quoted towards the end of the book, I should have written it down about we thought of all the potential problems, and then the guy said, well, yeah, it's the problem that you didn't think of. It's the problem that that ruins everything. That's a really sobering book in that way. But I thought the very, very end of the book was great, with the guy with the white felt cowboy hat, and how he was just, she was very caught off guard by how willing he was to just kind of live and let live. He kept saying, well, they're kind of a problem, but I can live with it. And she uses that as a kind of way of being hopeful. And just, it's just so great. He's so casual about, she's looking at all these fat cattle, and he says, yeah, they'll go to JDA or Cargill for slaughter, probably 60 days from now. And then she says, because people like me want to have my hamburger just twice a year. And that's, that's the other issue, is our responsibility for what we choose to eat and how much of it we want to eat. And yeah, I think there's an awful lot to think about in the book, which is great. And what a great guy the Pope is. Now, I'm a lapsed Catholic. I've got nothing about the Catholics except nightmares from nuns. But the Pope is he's great in the book. He's, cares about all the animals, doesn't want to really hurt the rats. He's my new hero. Wish my mother were alive. If I said that, she'd probably die of a heart attack.
I just thought that was so unexpected to bring in all of a sudden she's at the Vatican. It's like, oh, okay, great, let's do that. And then I thought the footnotes for those chapters were some of the most interesting, entertaining ones about the red shoes, and they're just like, so that, I don't know why I gravitated to that particular section. Maybe because it's more about people and a little less about animals. I'm a city girl. I like, domesticated animals. I'm not big on the outdoors in general. So in this sense, it was really, I just thought that was the Vatican Director of Gardens and Garbage. I just thought that, there's just so many lovely little touches there.
I agree. Yeah, I thought those 2 chapters in a row, I loved those chapters. Yeah. Those were really fascinating. Yeah. Larry didn't like them, but whatever.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Shall we talk about next month? Okay, I'm gonna Vanna White it. Not that you couldn't see these anyway. Ta-da! Bewilderment by Richard Powers. And there were so many amazing books that we talked about. We talked about Amor Towles' The Lincoln Highway, which, read that, so good. We could have done Fight Night by Miriam Taves. That's amazing as well. But we went with Bewilderment. I think it ties in so nicely with Clara and the Sun, Diary of a Young Naturalist. We're going to have a lot to talk about with this one. I think with Clara, we could have talked for a couple more hours. There was so much that we didn't even unpack with Clara. So I think we can pick some of that up with this.
Well, and we also thought that a lot of the books this fall are long, are quite long, and not that's not a bad thing. I mean, the Ruth Ozeki that I wrote about last week is, it's 500 pages, but it moves very quickly. But the Jonathan Franzen is 600 pages. The Amor Towles is 580 pages. And we just thought to ask somebody to kind of read that large a book and long a book, in the space of 3 or 3.5 weeks. Bewilderment's only
slim.
250 pages. And Richard Powers is, is a formidable writer. If you haven't read The Overstory, I really think it's, 50 years from now, it's going to be one of the 10 best books of this period of time. And, it's, and Bewilderment is, it's just got an awful lot to think about the universe and about being a parent and being a child. So I think
there's one review that shreds it, but clearly that reviewer did not read Diary of a Young Naturalist, because he didn't think that there is a Dara McAnulty in the world when we know that there is. So this is a similar kind of character in fiction.
Yeah, it was an unusually bad review by a very well-known reviewer, and so it caused a big stir actually in the literary scene. I mean, there was a huge amount of pushback about that review. Not that you're certainly entitled to write. You don't have to like a book to write about. I mean, if he doesn't like it, he should write about it if he wants to. It was just, I think, the way he chose to write about it, and it was so reductive that it really made people just kind of surprised and angry. It was quite interesting.
So what's the date for Bewilderment?
Oh, let me tell you.
You always want something, Larry. It's never enough, is it? It's always something else.
You're dealing with a retired teacher. That's what happens.
That's right. November 17th. Week before Thanksgiving.
The week before Turkey Day. Yeah.
Yes. And then December, we would like to do what we did last year and just have everybody talk about their favorite books that they read, and doesn't have to be a book from 2021, just anything that you really enjoyed reading this year that you would recommend. And why don't we do that one on December 16th? Oh, no, I'm sorry, 15th is a Wednesday. Because you don't have to read anything or prepare anything for that. Just come with your review or your favorite recommendations. And we're going to give you our January so you can be super prepared. And we're gonna do January like we did last year and do a classic. So we're gonna do Jane Austen's Persuasion. All right. And that will be January 19th, which is my 52nd birthday.
Really? Seriously? Wow.
I would love to spend my birthday with you guys.
Why not? Right.
Yeah, why not? It's a Wednesday. What else am I going to do?
It's a Wednesday. Wow.
It's a Wednesday.
So, Nancy, when you were talking about the effects that humans have on animals,
right,
it reminded me of a short story that I used to teach as part of a science fiction unit. It's called The Sound of Thunder by Ray Bradbury. And it's about in the future where they time travel back to the time of dinosaurs, and these big game hunters, they want to shoot dinosaurs. They have to stay on this path, and they're only killing dinosaurs that were about to die. Well, without giving the whole story away, one of the hunters goes off the path, steps on a butterfly, and it ends up changing the future of who wins the presidential election and what the future is like, just because of killing this one prehistoric butterfly and what that would mean to the food chain and evolution. So that your comments reminded me of that short story. I'm sure you can find it somewhere. It's The Sound of Thunder by Ray Bradbury.
So the butterfly effect is attributed to Ray Bradbury? I did not know that.
I don't know if the butterfly,
No,
I don't know when the butterfly effect came out, but this story, I think, was written in like the 1950s.
Yeah, I think the story is probably his example of the butterfly effect, because the butterfly effect was a little earlier. Larry? I think
Yes.
a wild pig just walked down the stairs behind you.
That would be our cat Olivia, named after Olivia
Oh,
from
okay.
Twelfth Night.
Oh, they said you're a pig.
Okay. Okay.
James, you just offended Dawn. Called her cat a pig. All right. Anybody have any last thoughts? Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Kate and Cindy, for giving us your international,
Yeah.
and Dan for your international views. And I don't know, James, let's have some profound words to end.
Oh my God. Okay. So I was at the Brookfield Zoo when I was in college trying to show off for my girlfriend. Stop it. You heard me. Don't interrupt my story. And so we were at the gorilla place, and there was a gorilla sitting right next to the glass. I mean, just literally 3 feet from me. So I was being a bit of a stupid show off, and I thought, okay, I'm going to have a stare down with this gorilla. And we locked eyes, and we just stared at each other. And I crouched down, so I was just right across from him. And my girlfriend was very impressed. And I was thinking, okay, I'm going to win. I'm just going to keep staring at him. And he kept staring. He never broke eye contact. And after about 45 seconds, I noticed he was going to pick something up with his hand, and he reached down with his hand, and he put a huge piece of lettuce on his head, like a hat. And his face never changed, his eyes never changed, staring at me, and I fell over laughing, and you could just tell he felt like saying, I won, you know.
That's right.
This girlfriend's going to leave you now because you just got outstared by a gorilla, right? But it was really one of the funniest moments of my entire life. I just thought it was so brilliant. And it's like dogs that bark. So, anyway, those are my words of wisdom.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you, everybody. We'll see you next month next month for Bewilderment. And have a great end of the week.
Say goodbye, Hannah.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye, Hannah.
Nancy, can I